Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 2nd, 2021 meeting of the Murfreesboro Planning Commission. We will call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum present this evening. Our first item of business is to approve the minutes of the April 21st, 2021 and May 5th, 2021 Planning Commission meetings. Did everyone have a chance to review those minutes, and do we have any changes, additions, corrections to those minutes? And if not, we'll take a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have one item of old business tonight. It is the Jackson Motel site plan review of parking lot modifications to an existing extended stay motel located on 1.4 acres, zoned Commercial Highway and GDO 4, located at 831 Northwest Broad Street. The DVP LLC is the developer. Ms. Green, good evening.
Good evening, thank you. Our item of old business was considered our last Planning Commission meeting, the day meeting, where we review plats and plans and GDO items. That day, you had submitted to you a site plan for some site modifications to the Jackson Motel. At that time, the representative needed to leave, and so you had some questions that only he could answer, and so you deferred this item either till tonight or until our next meeting to give Mr. Patel an opportunity to come before you and answer some of those questions. I reached out to Mr. Patel a couple times, and finally, last minute, he said that he could make it tonight but couldn't make it to the next meeting. So we asked him to be here tonight to talk to you about the building, the proposed plan for moving forward, what his plans are, his goals are, what he's going to do to the building, the status of that substandard that he has on the building from the fire. What we don't have tonight are plans that address those concerns that you brought up last time. So we wanted you to have that opportunity to speak to Mr. Patel. So what we'd like for you to do is, of course, consider the item and talk to him, and any questions you may have him available to answer them. But because his design team weren't able to get all the comments that I heard from that meeting addressed, we'll ask for you to defer action on that plan till next meeting so that we can give time to review the plan. But we didn't want to miss the opportunity for you to actually have this interaction with Mr. Patel. He was excited about coming and sharing what he knows about the plan. To sort of reiterate, it is the Jackson Motel that is located on Northwest Broad Street, Medical Center Parkway. It's an older structure. It's an extended stay motel as defined in our zoning ordinance. When you talked about this item before, I'm just going to say some of the things that I remember you talking about. We didn't have minutes available yet, and we'll get those to you. But one of them was to provide an updated site plan that addresses staff's comments. Those were the separations, the landscaping. Provide a plan or information on how the fire damage will be corrected. That includes exterior work to the building. Provide a plan for addressing the substandard structure notice issued and how that is being addressed. Provide a phasing plan for the landscaping if it is to be phased. And then I heard from the Planning Commission that the majority of the landscaping, particularly what's along Medical Center Parkway, should be included in phase 1 and not a future phase. Look for opportunities to add additional landscaping at the entrance where possible. Provide a percentage for the current open space and the proposed open space to see if they're still in line with our GDO requirements. Provide calculations for the number of parking spaces currently available and the number of spaces being added. And we were looking at that because the zoning ordinance specifically references what work needs to be done with parking lot expansions, whether it's just the expansion that needs to meet our current standards or the entire parking lot. And so we wanted to have those numbers available since you were asking those questions. Those are the items that I heard you bring up at the last meeting that I took notes with. If there's anything else, of course, I'll be sure to write them down and get it addressed. But I would like for the opportunity for Mr. Patel to come up and speak to you, answer any questions you have, and provide his vision for the area.
Perfect. Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Sunny Patel. I'm from the Jackson Motel. The room not finished. We are still negotiating with the insurance company. We hired a third-party adjuster to negotiate a settle with the insurance company. The final inspection meeting It's to take place in this property this coming week. My contractor have pulled a building permit, and we expect to be positioned to start and complete the project in less than 30 days. And improvement the property, we have improved inside the room, which I have pictures. So I have planned for some time to improve the property and expand the parking lot. The parking lot plan, which I initially submitted, allowed for approximately 4 additional parking spots in a phase 2. And where I currently have a 6 parking place on the phase 2, the parking area is immediately behind Checkers Drive-In with no real visibility to Broad Street. The proposed expansion of the parking area improve the medical center parkway entrance and provide for landscaping on the property which does not currently exist. So I would like to, improve from outside. So if you guys can allow us to improve the more parking place in towards to the back side of the building, towards like Medical Center Parkway and face to the 831 Northwest Broad Street.
So remind us again with the landscaping, which phase are you wanting to put the landscaping in on Medical Center Parkway?
Phase 2, close to the rooms, I would like to do the landscaping. And phase 2, around the Checkers, next to the Checkers, close to the Checkers, I would like to do landscaping, but I need space about 10 feet landscaping instead of 24 landscaping, so I can have enough parking space. Right now, we have currently phase 2, 6 parking space. I just like to add 4 more.
Okay, so can I just confirm, so we're talking about phase 1 is basically you're doing the improvements to the
Yes.
area that was burned?
Yes, phase 1.
And you're saying that would be done in about 30 days from the time it starts, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yeah,
And you expect that would start possibly within 30 days from now?
yes,
Okay, so we're looking maximum 60 days on those improvements to be done, and that is your phase 1?
yeah,
And then you would start phase 2, which would include the parking lot improvements and landscaping
landscaping,
plans?
yes.
Okay, and you were asking for originally, I believe, 8 or 9 parking spaces back there? And, I think that's where we're going to need to probably see the actual drawings before we can do anything, but it does help us to understand kind of what you're...
The phase 1 already, we have already presented the phase 1. I'm doing the same way, whatever the require is. And phase 2, we have already 6 parking spots, but I would like to add 4 more, which...
So when you say you already have 6 parking spots, you had 6 on the original plan that you showed us? And you're wanting to add 4 more?
Yes. No, on phase 2.
So, Ms. Green, can you confirm, are the 6 parking spaces something that's already approved? Or is this all part of this same application, I believe?
Sure. So when I try to describe a site plan to people not like you, but who don't understand what they are, I usually say it's simply a communication tool. The site plan communicates to the contractor, it communicates the building codes, it communicates the planning commission staff what you would like to build. And so what I would like to is have on paper a clear site plan that delineates all the improvements and when they're going to happen. And that, because I don't have that yet, I think it can happen. I think is the reason we've asked for the action on the plans to be deferred. I know that Huddleston Steel has been working on the plans and they have something for us. I think that Mr. Patel is unable to get as many parking spaces as he wishes he could get because he has to design the parking to meet our standards, and so he can't put as many in, and I'm sure part of what he's asking is to do more on his site than can meet our minimum standards, of course, which is not something we would allow. When it comes to the parking and the landscaping and the phasing, we, of course, would like to have that tool that keeps us all on the same pages so we can see exactly what's being proposed. I think so phase one are parking spaces along the building that currently are parallel to the building, foundation plantings, and phase two is the parking on the opposite side. I think it can easily be adjusted to include landscaping along Medical Center Parkway in phase one. That is a matter. It's not something that would need to be ripped out for the reconstruction of phase two. Actually, this work is so small, it probably can be done in one phase. I'm not quite sure why they're phasing it. Maybe there's an internal reason that I don't know, but usually work this small is generally done in one phase. With that being said, the phase two is optional. They could never build it. So what I thought I heard you say was in phase one, get as much of that landscaping and what we can in phase one so that we know that it is built. I think, though, what he's saying is like the plans that Huddleston Steel have worked on, they're not netting the amount of spaces he'd like, but they have to meet minimum standards, which means landscaping, landscape islands, parking, drive aisles, and landscaping along the perimeter of the property.
So I believe what we just saw showed 10 spaces basically backing up to the Checkers parking, or the Checkers area. And those are the 10 spaces you would like to have back there.
Yes.
But they don't have there's no landscaping in what we're looking at right
So
there.
this plan, you could not approve this plan
Right.
because it doesn't meet minimum standards as it's shown in this handout. Really quick at this, aren't I? I don't have a scale, but it doesn't meet your minimum standards.
And so basically, I guess, Mr. Patel, we're glad to have you here tonight to talk to us about what it is you are wanting to do and would like to do. And then we'll still end up, I believe, deferring until we get to see the actual site plan and what would be presented that we could vote on. So I'll let y'all ask some questions.
So I just make a comment. Margaret Ann's already mentioned it in her remarks, but I'd love to see the Medical Center Parkway, whatever landscaping that you're planning on doing that in phase one. I think that because you're going to be doing the plantings in front, my understanding, you're going to be doing the plantings in front of the rooms as part of phase one. And so if you could do the plantings that would be on Medical Center Parkway, that would be great. The other thing that I'll comment on is very glad to hear that it sounds like you're going to be able to get those rooms fixed in 30 to 60 days. Understand the insurance issue that people go through from time to time.
Yeah.
But that's very good to hear. I think that was one of our, without you being here and kind of being able to tell us what was going on there, that was a point of concern. So appreciate you being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you. And I would like to improve from outside. We already did improve from inside. In the future, we like to do the not a weekly customer. We like to get like a daily customer. So
Right. All the improvements, much appreciated, and I think the improvements you're going to make
Thank
and
you
we'll
all.
see on Medical Center Parkway will be wonderful. Thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing it back next time. So I guess we need a motion to
I don't know, may have other comments.
comments.
Okay.
No. Oh, no.
I'm just gonna, we need action.
I think
defer.
we need to defer.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you again, Mr. Patel, for being here. Okay, next we'll move on to our public hearings for this evening. I believe we have 6 of them. Our first one is a zoning application for approximately 4.6 acres located along West Northfield Boulevard and Sulphur Springs Road to be rezoned from RS10 to PCD, known as Sanders Corner. P&H Joint Venture is the applicant. Ms. Green.
Thank you very much. Our first public hearing this evening is for you to consider an application for changing the zoning of property located along the north side of West Northfield Boulevard and west of Sulphur Springs Road. It's shaded green on the map before you. I think they're probably pulling up Mr. Blomley's computer, and they need to pull up.
You gonna pull it up on yours, or you want me to pull it up?
Oh, I
On
have it.
Okay.
Yeah, I need it on mine.
I think the cable department needs to change it to the podium computer.
So the property is in the green color on the map before you and consists of 3 parcels, 2 parcels similarly sized and a very small triangle in the bottom left-hand corner. As I mentioned, it's located along West Northfield Boulevard, and it's approximately 4.6 acres. As it is zoned today, it's zoned RS10, that's single-family residential district, with a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. The applicant's requesting to change the zoning from RS10 to PCD. That's Planned Commercial District, and the PCD zone is for planned developments with only commercial uses in them. The adjacent land uses include the properties to the north and west as developed single-family lots, which are also zoned RS10. To the east, to the Saddlebrook PUD, which consists of 267 multifamily dwelling units, 84 small residential lots, and 68 townhomes that are currently under development. To the south, across West Northfield Boulevard, is the Northfield Village PCD, which is developed currently with a self-storage facility, and it has a remaining commercial outparcel with limited permitted uses. I did include a couple pages from the Northfield Village PCD for your reference in the packet if you wanted to see what was approved across the street. Sinking Creek and its floodway are not showing up on the map I have right now, but you can see that they are across Sulphur Springs Road just to the east. Along Oak Haven Drive to the at the end of Oak Haven Drive here, the Planning Commission reviewed and approved a subdivision plat for 10 additional single-family lots within that RS10 zoning. This property was previously considered for a PCD, Planned Commercial District zoning, and it was also called Sanders Corner. That application was for a smaller property because it didn't include the northern parcel, and it was ultimately deferred on August 22nd, 2019. The 2019 Sanders Corner PCD, which is what I call the old plan, the 2019 Sanders Corner PCD, was 2.5 acres, whereas this one is 4.6 acres. And the previous plan proposed approximately 9,000 square foot commercial retail center, one 6,811 square foot restaurant. At that time, the Sanders family owned the property, and they were represented by their realtor, Mr. Larry Sims, and prepared an application for speculative planned development zoning. You may recall at that time that the Planning Commission and City Council expressed concern with speculative PCDs. I did include minutes of the City Council meeting in your packet, so you can read those. One of the funniest one-liners that a planning director said was, if you want to become the most unpopular planning director in history, don't allow speculative rezonings anymore, and that's what the planning director at the time said, and we haven't brought them back to you, but that was part of what was being considered back then. The council, as I mentioned, deferred action, with several members expressing concern with the speculative planned development, uses, and access to the site. The current PCD, I told you I included a lot of information in this packet, is being made by P&H Joint Ventures, whose representative Charlie Patel and Matt Taylor are here this evening. The applicant does currently own all 3 parcels, so this isn't a contract, or it isn't a rezoning application being made on a contract. The plan, as you can see, has 3 principal structures and a gas pump. The plan on the screen before you has a 3,888 square foot convenience market. That also includes a 1,300 square foot restaurant tenant in the same building, a 10,200 square foot commercial retail center, and in that commercial retail center, they're proposing one of the uses to possibly be restaurant, which will be limited at 3,500 square feet, and another to be a liquor store, which is limited to 4,000 square feet. Also proposed on this plan is one 6,540 square foot office building along the north side. Of course, this board I have before you is the concept plan for this development. It looks a little different than what you've seen before because the plan that when you scheduled the public hearing also included an office building here. But because that office building was more speculative than staff was comfortable with, we did ask them to take that building off the plans because at this point, it's not the building that will be constructed the soonest. They did provide in their book the list of the permitted uses, and of course, we ask that you look at those, and if you see any that have concerns, express those to us, and you can, of course, make conditions of approval that they be removed. I did ask the applicants to include similar conditions to this in this plan development that were included across the street, and some of those included constructing the buffer in phase 1 so that it would have more opportunity to mature and grow through time if this property is developed. You can see on the map or on the exhibit I have today that it's a 3-phase plan with blue being phase 1. Phase 1 includes the gas station, the gas pumps, and some other improvements. Phase 2 is pink, and the yellow area is phase 3. So they did prohibit outdoor storage, especially including gardens and lawn supplies. The outdoor speakers for patios are permitted, but they cannot be amplified and shall only be for background ambience. So we want to make sure they're not obnoxious to any people who live nearby. They are committing for the liquor store signage to meet GDO3 standards. Signage and PCDs and restrictive covenants will be recorded prior to the first C of O. I know in times past, not particularly with this project, but with uses like liquor stores, I've heard from Planning Commission and members of our community about concerns with signage. It's a difficult signage is, I guess I'm glad that that's not one of the things that I deal with on a daily basis, but it's difficult, and so staff recommended that if they commit to meeting the GDO3 standards, it's a much higher quality sign, and so you couldn't just put up cheap signs all over the building, but with this commitment, they would really be doing the most restrictive signage that we have in our community. And then the gas station convenience store, they're proposing to limit the hours of operation so that they extend from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. As I mentioned, the buffer and the fencing along the perimeter will be installed as part of the first phase. The remaining out parcels that aren't being developed, we, of course, with the discussion to the south, talked about what they looked like in the interim until they actually were developed. So they are committing to attractively grade them, plant grass, and maintain as open green space until they're ready to be developed. Lots 2 and 3 are not to be used for parking of construction equipment or storage trailers after the completion of the first one. And lots 2 and 3 are not to be used for any temporary business like flea markets, fireworks stands, etc. And those were basically plagiarized from the development to the south. I mentioned the phasing plan to you. This development, of course, has improvements in the existing public right-of-way. Along Sulphur Springs Road, you can see there's some proposed turn lanes into the site. And then there are 2 entrances along West Northfield Boulevard as well. I think something that you're going to hear about quite a bit tonight is the proposed Oak Haven Drive extension. I guess I gotta go back on my materials. So we did work with staff about the right-of-way improvements to make sure that they were in line with our major transportation plan. The right-of-way on West Northfield Boulevard and Sulphur Springs Road appears to be sufficient. We did see that 1974 with the plat that I have on the screen, Forest Hills Estate, Section 8, there was right-of-way dedicated but not constructed. After working with all of our staff, and I'll invite our city engineer up to discuss this with you, but in 1974, there was a portion of right-of-way dedicated and no infrastructure was completed. And so we are asking the developer to take on the cost to build that road and the infrastructure that the city accepted. At some point, somehow, the city accepted it. Today, we wouldn't accept any right-of-way without facilities being in it or money to make sure that it happens. And of course, the site drains to Sinking Creek. In a planned development, you are allowed to ask for exceptions to our development standards, and they have identified 2 exceptions. One is to reduce the front setback along Oak Haven Court. It would normally be 42 feet, and they're proposing 20 feet. That setback is not a concern to staff, but we, of course, welcome any concerns you may have. The second exception is relating to the perimeter planting yards that are within the development. You can see that they're proposed lot lines, and on each side of the lot line, there's landscape area. And so this is being designed and master planned as one development, and so they're asking for some flexibility in those perimeter planting yards, but those are where that ends. The recommendation of the planning department, we are generally supportive of this rezoning request for the following reasons. The first is the plan creates an opportunity for the developer to construct infrastructure that was dedicated to the city of Murfreesboro in 1974 but not built. In addition to providing additional connectivity to the current residents, it will benefit the 10 additional lots approved on the street and any redevelopment with the area. It creates a space for neighborhood commercial uses to serve the current and future developments, which may reduce vehicle trips or mileage. And the development quality is generally in conformance with the standards of the Murfreesboro Design Guidelines. So at this time, I'd like to invite our city engineer, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Green.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Emerson, and I wanted to talk about this project in the fact that the developer is proposing to make improvements to Sulphur Springs Road by adding turn lanes, and they are also making improvements to Northfield Boulevard by adding turn lanes. They will have a right turn in and a right turn in and out, and right turn in and out on both Sulphur Springs and Northfield, and full access on both of those roads. The other improvement that they will be making is to Oak Haven Drive. That right-of-way was dedicated in 1974 when that plat was recorded, but no infrastructure was built in that right-of-way. By having this developer build it, the expense would be on the developer and not on the city taxpayers. And they did propose to do the Oak Haven Drive, the first part in Phase 1, and the second part in Phase 3, but we're asking that the second part that makes the final connection be done in either Phase 1 or Phase 2. Is there anything else? Anybody else? Okay, Matt Taylor, we're going to ask you to come up.
I'm not sure I've got a lot to add after that. But I'm Matt Taylor of SEC. Appreciate the time, Chair Lady Jones, and members of the Planning Commission. I do have Nick Patel, one of the applicants, with me tonight. His partner, Charlie Patel, had an out-of-town family obligation, so he does apologize. He's sorry he misses tonight. But we do have a brief presentation to you on the Sanders Corner PCD. As Ms. Green said, it's about a 4.6 acre site at the northwest corner of Sulphur Springs and Northfield Boulevard. Today, it is currently zoned RS10. It does have a few vacant structures, some mature trees. Overall, it's been, I think most of those structures have been vacant for several years. Here in the top left is one of those structures. The top right is a neighboring property. And then on the bottom is the existing storage facility that was recently constructed on the south side of Northfield Boulevard. As Ms. Green said, the project's constructed in 3 primary structures. They're totaling about 22,000 square feet in size. All of those structures are 1 story. We've got multiple access points on Northfield as well as Sulphur Springs Road, and then we're also proposing the extension and construction of Oak Haven Drive, and it would have multiple access points onto that street. We've done all that and preserved 40% open space across the site, which would obviously be filled with landscaping, buffering, screening, trees, shrubs, pedestrian walkways. We do have strong pedestrian linkage between each of these buildings as well as each road that I mentioned previously. All of our lighting standards would comply with the GDO, which I think are the most stringent that we have in the city, so that would limit the height of the poles, it would limit the lighting values at the property line, but it would also require us to provide adequate lighting at night so that our patrons and visitors to our businesses feel safe and secure walking amongst the grounds. So we've done all that to try to create a neighborhood commercial center where You stop on your way to work, you stop on your way home from work, where our employees get to know you and vice versa. So we think it's a unique opportunity with its location and the proposed uses. We hope that you agree. We spent a tremendous amount of time working with staff on the architecture. We went through multiple iterations to get the right design for this location. And so obviously some givens in our city anymore are defined bases, defined entryways, multiple building planes. One of the commitments we made early working with staff was a one-story building on all these buildings. So we set a maximum height that's in line with what the existing zoning has. So we've also tried to do building accent lighting, which is going to be sensitive to the neighbors, but it also makes the buildings attractive at night so that it's not just a daytime building. We've tried to create very consistent architecture to create a very cohesive campus feel. That's not to say the buildings are identical, but they're going to borrow elements from each other. They're going to borrow elements from the residential. They're going to borrow elements from the storage across the street. Probably the building that we spent the most time on and had some very late changes as recently as Thursday or Friday was the convenience store or gas station. We made those changes through working with staff to create a more residential scale, a very neighborhoody feel for that building. And of course we did all that, and we've maintained good quality materials, brick, stone. Our gas canopy, which is very important to the project, will meet the GDO requirements. And so this building here came to us from staff on Thursday or Friday of last week, and we're happy that they suggested this. They found this architecture. We think it screams residential, screams neighborhood, and so obviously our colors and our branding will be different, but we're very excited about this being the vision and inspiration for our convenience store in the future. The commercial center, we tried to borrow some elements from the storage facility, borrow some elements from residential buildings around us, but still wanted it to look like a commercial building. And I think that staff and the architect worked very well together to achieve that goal. And then the office building, it's set back off of Northfield Boulevard. It's a second-tier lot, and so it is more residential in character than any of the others, I think. But it's still, you can tell it's a commercial building. It's very good architecture. We're excited to bring this to you. And of course, one of the most prominent features on the site will be the gas canopy. As I mentioned earlier, that will comply with the GDO guidelines. And so the stripe that you show here will be reduced in size. The color will likely change depending on who our final brand is. The columns themselves will of course be masonry. They will match the building. And then we have what I like to call Margaret Ann's brackets as a little detail piece at the top of those. So I think that adds a little flair. Obviously very important to the project given its location. Landscape design, as Ms. Green said, we've committed to a type D buffer along the west side that will be planted early in the project. That buffer also includes a fence. And of course you get your standard foundation plantings and landscape signage, everything that we require on all of our commercial sites now. And so that buffer is on the western side here, as Ms. Green said. And then just a sample of the type of materials. We want a lot of color, but we also want the dense green screening where it's appropriate. The uses, we try to start with a commercial fringe, very neighborhood friendly. We already talked about the liquor store, the gas station, restaurant. We think that some of these, maybe the office building could be a financial service, not the payday loan, but more of your Edward Jones. Maybe he could be the financial advisor for the community here. Maybe a Weight Watchers, a bookstore. So I think this has a great opportunity to change this corner. And then since day one, access has been a big part of the conversation. So as Ms. Emerson said, we've committed to right turn lanes on both of our streets, Sulphur Springs and Northfield, as well as a left turn lane on Northfield. I think the storage facility as well as the city completed recent improvements here. We will continue those improvements. Those improvements will be done with our phase one, which would be the C-store at the corner. Along with that phase one, we have proposed to build the first portion of Oak Haven, shown here in red. That would be a 3-lane cross section at the intersection with Sulphur Springs, come back to our first connection into the project, and then connect back over to the gas station portion of the project. And then whenever we build the building number 3, we would go ahead and finish Oak Haven, shown in blue. We've proposed this solution to try to achieve our goals, try to ultimately achieve the city's goals of interconnectivity, but also try to appease the neighbors. We hosted a neighborhood meeting, and I walked away feeling like the bulk of that conversation was centered around this Oak Haven Drive connection. And so we're trying to delay that as long as possible to minimize and delay that connection for the neighbors, so while still committing to achieving the end goal. So I'll be happy to answer any questions now or after the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Questions for Mr. Taylor or any of the staff?
I've got questions.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lance?
Because of a comment that I've gotten from one of the citizens, I'm not certain if they were there at the neighborhood meeting or not, but at the
Okay.
neighborhood meeting, was the liquor store part? What I was told was there was not gonna be a liquor store by one of the residents, so I'm just kinda curious.
It has been a part of our project the whole time, so it was a part of the conversation that night, so absolutely. Now, the inside of this pattern book, you'll see that we limited the size and we dictated what end of the building it could be on, and so that was not part of, so that's a commitment we have made after the neighborhood meeting, after taking that feedback, taking the feedback from this board, taking feedback from staff, so we further restricted the size and the location of that, but it was definitely part of the use.
Matt, could you pull up a site plan and show the 2 exceptions that are being asked? Just point them out so I can see them a little more clearly.
Yes, ma'am. So right there, that is a 20-foot setback instead of the 42-foot setback. And then this drive aisle right here, we have the property line in the middle of the drive aisle. And so instead of having landscaping on each side, we have moved the landscaping to be over to each side of that property line, and same thing there. So we're still planting the same material and the same landscape, we just pushed it to the side.
And the reasoning for the change in the setback?
We just felt like it was, felt like it needed to be a little closer. It's a, slower speed road. We felt like it actually would help slow the speed a little through there, so.
So I thought there was only one. Is there 2 lots of record on here?
So right now there are 3 individual parcels. We would reconfigure those so that there would be 3 lots ultimately, and so.
Okay.
And so we would envision the gas station being on a lot, the commercial center, and then what I've termed the office building on a separate lot. And so 1, 2, 3.
Why wouldn't you just make it one big lot? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of the way we may get a buyer that wants to buy that lot per se and build that building. So that could be part of it, Councilman. And sometimes it helps, I think, with the financing to be able to, that is what we're going to leverage versus the entire property.
I was going to say about that, they may say that they want to do 1 lot today, but in my 17 years here, I see people come back to me and want to subdivide it later. So I generally ask them to design it so that there's no problems later if they want to do that, even if they intend on owning the whole thing, and so that you don't have to tear out concrete or anything like that. Plus, it's additional opportunities for landscaping if they design it with the extra landscaping. If you took the lot lines out, you would have less. So I ask for them to design it so that it could be, but it doesn't have to be, so that it eliminates maybe future conflicts.
Okay, any other questions before we open the public hearing? Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. All right, we will open this public hearing tonight and ask anyone that would like to speak on this item to come forward. We'll ask you to state your name and address. You come to the podium, state your name and address, and make all of your comments, please, directly to the Planning Commission and not to members of the audience or the developers. All questions come to the Planning Commission. We'll make note of any questions you have, and then we'll try to address everything at the end of the public hearing. Also, you'll need to limit your comments to 3 minutes, so we have time to hear from everybody. So with that, we will open this first public hearing and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak.
Yes, this is Chris Hollinsworth, 2202 Oak Haven Drive. Since I'm on the street stub, I don't know if you have a picture of that up, where the street stub is of Oak Haven, where you had the proposed extension of the road. I'm one of 2 houses at the street stub. And you know, if you extend, and I agree that it was probably intended to be extended at some point in the future, but if you extend that now, 50 odd years later, with the traffic, and we're not talking about single-family homes, we're talking about a 30,000 square foot commercial center. You run traffic up into our neighborhood. Well, they're going to realize that's a dead-end street. They had to make a left turn to get out. And they stop. We're going to make our left turn. They're stopping in front of my driveway. So I have this constant flow of traffic potentially coming up and blocking my driveway. And, you know, that, I mean, I understand everybody, property owners have rights. You want to, you know, do something with your property, but you shouldn't be creating a burden on me by extending a road, which I don't know how you would address that, how that could be fixed, so people could flow and without stopping and blocking my traffic. So that's one concern I have. Another concern I have is, and you hear this all the time, people come before you, they want to get a zoning change. And they say, you gave the change across the street. You gave them a zoning change. And, you know, why can't I get a zoning change? You know, well, the problem is, are you going to submit the restrictions that apply to that property? And if the answer is no, why should you get a zoning change? I mean, the neighbors on Woodmont, behind the property on the other side of Northfield, they got that change, they got restrictions. There's no gas station that can come in there. There's no liquor stores that can come in, as far as I know. But when you come to our side of the Northfield, on our side, and you want a zoning change, you don't submit the same restrictions. You know, you get a pass, you get to put a gas station in and a liquor store in. That's a little hard to take. A liquor store in a neighborhood, I mean, that's, we have families, we have, and I mean, I understand mixed use is it's a thing now, I understand it, but to come in a residential neighborhood, you need to be a little bit more concerned, or a little bit more about neighbors and families. You don't want a child walking down to a liquor store, a teenager, I should say, not a child, but you don't want them walking down to a liquor store and seeing that, and the school right down the road. I mean, and I brought that up at the neighborhood meeting. I asked Mr. Taylor, could a liquor store come, or a tobacco store, at this, is what you're proposing? He said yes. And I'm thinking about this property. Well, how is that equivalent to the property across the street? Why do we get a different standard here? You know, and if I remember, I looked this up on the city website. Ms. Green, the planner, made a comment at the very end that this proposal could significantly change the landscape of the neighborhood, which, by the way, does not conform. This proposal does not conform with the 2035 comprehensive plan. Well, I understand property owners have rights, but for one property owner to come in and to significantly change the entire landscape, or a considerable part of it, for one, that's stretching it just a bit. I understand, you know, you have a right within your zoning, but to demand a right out of your zoning, that's going to have a radical change. And by the way, you don't want to conform to the rules of the property across the street that got a zoning change because you want to build a gas station and a liquor store. I mean, it doesn't tell me you really care about the neighborhood. So I just have you know, I've been here 44 years. My parents built this house. I own it now. We love it. They thought about moving at times. Where are you going to move to? It's a nice neighborhood. And this is the one thing we always feared. In 44 years, this was what we feared. But one day, this would come, this kind of proposal. You know, and I understand we are kind of on the edge. You go a little further down, you got Heritage Park Drive, you got what used to be Food Line. I think it's a 12-stone now.
Watch your time.
But, you know, we're not that close. We're far, we're not that close to commercial. So give us a little bit, take that into consideration. The light retail, family family friendly. I'm a little nervous, I apologize. But again, that street, it was probably intended to be extended, but that was 50 years ago, and things have changed. Don't put all this on us, so thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Hollingsworth. Who's next?
Hello, my name is Robert Swank. I live at 2222 Oak Haven Drive. It's down at the cul-de-sac at the very end of the street. I do know that that was zoned for 10 other parcels, but the good news is that that family member bought out the property from their siblings, and he's just going to build another house there. So we're not going to have a bunch of 10 houses built next to my house. So thank God for that. I do want to let you know that this neighborhood is an extremely quiet neighborhood. If they cut that road through there, I'm going to tell you, in the morning hours, when I used to take my son to Northfield Elementary, I would also encourage a traffic study to be done at that traffic light, because the traffic backs up all the way from the school all the way up Northfield to the west, and you can hardly get out of that intersection in the mornings. Can you imagine adding a gas station there? It blows my mind. We didn't put a gas station across the street on the recent build over there with the storage center. Why would we put a gas station across the street on the corner where it backs up to all our houses? I just don't understand that. But I will share this with you. At any given moment, there's about 15 or 16 kids that play in our neighborhood. They ride their bikes. It's quiet as a church mouse most of the time in our neighborhood. It's a wonderful place to live. When they open that street up, everybody's going to be looking for a shortcut in the morning hours and probably in the evening hours, and they're going to realize they can cut through Oak Haven, turn on Trinity, and go down through the neighborhood and get back out on Northfield. So it's going to be highway running through our neighborhood, and that's what concerns me. And I just want you to consider that for us. Please, look, I understand the city's growing, we're progressing. I'm not against that, not one bit. I love living in Murfreesboro. I wear the hat proudly. But I want you to know that I just don't think we need that street. If they could do this project without the street, that would be fantastic. And that would definitely bless our neighborhood. We don't need the street. We want our quiet neighborhood. And we want our kids to be able to play freely and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swank.
My name is Gary Eakes. I live at 819 Trinity. I've been there about 40 years. There are a lot of kids playing in the neighborhood. None of them are mine. But we enjoy watching them. My wife is their grandmother to all of them. Three things that bother me: Oak Haven and Trinity. There seems to be some confusion about Oak Haven and Trinity. If you put a road through and call it Oak Haven, it's only Oak Haven for one block, and then it becomes Trinity, because you cannot turn right or you dead end in Oak Haven. So it's all coming to Trinity. If you put that plot up, we could see it. If you've got that somewhere that you can put that up. That shows, yeah, thank you. An entry and exit to that property on Northfield is not a very safe thing to present to the neighborhood. The entrance and exits are just, I guess maybe a sand wedge away from the intersection there of Sulphur Springs and Northfield. So traffic is always turning right. 40 years ago, I got stopped for a California rolling stop or something like that. You could stop everybody all day. Nobody stops at that. When you're turning right and it's open, red light means nothing. You just continue with your speed. So if you're coming off Northfield, you've got a hill coming up, you're going to create a very dangerous situation for traffic. I've only been there 40 years, so maybe I'm wrong, but I've been up and down that little stretch of property a whole lot of times. I may have missed on the liquor store. I don't know. I was there. I was trying to pay attention, but I don't recall that being mentioned. At our previous meeting, it may have been, and I may be totally wrong there. We had one, the traffic is my main concern because I'm the fourth house down from where the intersection will be with Trinity. And I don't know why you would call it Oak Haven. I just can't, it's not Oak Haven because Oak Haven is a dead end. And what the traffic, any excess traffic that's created through that property will be on Trinity. It will not be on Oak Haven because there's no exit on Oak Haven. So with that in mind, taxes, somebody mentioned at our last meeting, well, this is an opportunity to increase the tax rates or the tax income for the city of Murfreesboro. There's only so much discretionary spending in the community. It'll be spent somewhere. There will be no added sales tax from this particular venture because if they buy gas down the street or if they buy gas there, same amount of tax is going to be generated. That's not a factor to be considered in my mind. But please think about the street. It doesn't have to be there, I don't think. But if it means the success of this property, that's the only value I can see in the fact that by doing the street, then you give some validation to this property and the venture that's taking place there. But, you know, we do pay taxes. There are about 50 homes that are immediately impacted by an additional street. Traffic, as was mentioned, school times, traffic will be terrible. Kids are used to being out in the neighborhood and enjoying themselves. If we have traffic coming and going from the convenience store and the liquor store, in my limited experience as a 77-year-old citizen of this community, those people typically, and believe me, at one time I may have been one of them, but you do not pay attention to speed of your vehicle. You're in a hurry to go somewhere. So keep that in mind as you look at this. There are apparently three stages. I hope before we move to another stage, we have another opportunity to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Hicks.
My name is Andrea Smith, and I live at 906 Trinity Drive. I walk in that neighborhood twice a day, weather permitting, and I walk along the streets that are not dead-end streets, and I am here to attest to you that people do not stop at stop signs, and they speed, and they do not use their blinkers. The good news is that Trinity Drive, where I live, is a dead-end street, so I don't have to be as cautious with my safety when I'm walking on that dead-end street. If it opens up, I am very concerned about the through traffic. I believe at the neighborhood meeting, we were told that sidewalks were going to be put in, and when he described where the sidewalks were going to be in, it was a fraction of Oak Haven and did not extend to the stop sign at Trinity where that traffic is going to be traveling. So the few, I don't know if it's feet or what, of sidewalks does not cover the entire space. Another thing, hold on, I lost my train of thought. Oh, they have proposed, or they have sold in their proposal to do this about how great the entrances are going to be on Northfield and Sulphur Springs by adding a turning lane and making a right turn or something like that. Well, if those are sufficient enough to move ahead with the project, then there would be no reason to open up Oak Haven. And I think that would be a good compromise between the neighbors and the consumer. I also suggested at the meeting that if for some reason those roads are opened, that we have and I don't know what they're called now, the lady had a name for them, but the speed bumps that are like the ones found in Northwoods neighborhood community, they're not speed bumps anymore, they're something different. But I think it is very necessary to either not have through traffic or take precautions to slow the traffic down. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming out. Who else?
Good evening. I'm Randy Johnson. I live at 615 Elliott. Been there 40-plus years. I've been watching this whole corner be developed from the tearing down the church to having a strip center there to the A-plus storage. Went through a year of blasting and excavation there before they got that built. And in all of that, in the planning for that, the Planning Commission, City Council was very, I guess, cognizant of the neighbors and the character of the neighborhood, and specifically denied the possibility of a service station, a liquor store, any kind of drive-through operation that had an outdoor squawk box. And we appreciated that. And we've wound up with a very nice self-storage unit, very low impact on the neighborhood, few trips in and out, doesn't impact traffic. Now we're looking at a proposal to put a service station and a C-store across the street, which are going to be high impact, high traffic. If Mr. Patel is going to make money, that place has got to be full all the time. He's got to have traffic coming in and out of there. And if you approve this, I guess my question is, why could someone not come in and say, okay, you rezoned that for a service station, we want to put one on the other corner below A-plus storage? I understand the concerns of all the people with the traffic, Oak Haven, and I understand the city's desire to have cross connectivity, and I think you've got to think about those things. They're coming into a neighborhood. People bought homes there in the RS10, RS15 classification, expected that to stay residential. When you bought your homes where you bought them, you expected your area to stay what it was. And now we're talking about coming in with a high-impact commercial development. Like Mr. Taylor and his group, they've done a wonderful job of building a beautiful site. It's just in the wrong place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate you coming out again. Who else? Anybody else? Okay. Close the public hearing. Ready for addressing some of the questions and any other comments and questions from the Planning Commission.
I've got a couple questions, I guess, for
Go ahead, Mr.
staff, maybe
Lawrence.
first.
Mhm.
And I don't know, this is going to be a tough one to answer, I'm afraid, but the comment was made, and I remember some of this, but I hate to trust it from that far back. When we did the storage unit across Northfield, that zoning, I don't remember exactly how we left that, what limitations there were, what restrictions. I remember a big part of that conversation being, I remember Eddie was involved in it a lot because he's kind of in that neighborhood behind that, and had talked to a lot of neighbors about it. And I remember that the storage unit facility was kind of an okay thing because it wasn't a real high traffic, high impact kind of a use for a commercial use. You just got people coming in now, in and out of there a little bit to get stuff in and out of their units from time to time. So I remember that. But the corner, I can't remember what restrictions we did make or have or what we ended up doing with that. Can you?
Sure. Yeah. I anticipated that question in the comparison. I thought it was a fair comparison from the neighbors and from you, and included a sheet from the program book. If my screen is available to you to look at now, I don't know, sometimes it can pop up on your screen. It shows you the uses that are permitted. I put a watermark on it so you can tell the difference. What is permitted on that Lot 2, which is called the Lot 2, is a convenience sales and service, maximum 5,000 square feet. It's specific that no fuel pumps were allowed and no gas station was allowed. Also, in this list of permitted uses, there's not a liquor store permitted. You can see the chart that I have up is specific to Lot 2.
I thought I remembered that correctly, and I'm sorry I didn't.
No, it's fine. I think I probably may have given you more information than you might have needed, but I'm glad to get it for you.
Okay, so you're saying on that corner, on the opposite side where the storage unit is now, on that corner, you could have a convenience store. It could just not have a gas station.
That's right. Right adjacent or between the self-storage and Sulphur Springs Road, there's a green lot, a vacant lot. And on that lot, what I have on the screen are the uses that would be permitted there. They exclude liquor store and they exclude gas stations.
And is that actually 2 lots in there, or is that just 1 lot?
They called it 2 lots. And here at the top of this little plan, you can see the minimum characteristics for Lot 2. What's red is Lot 2, although, would it be 2 lots? This 1 lot, and I actually couldn't read it, so I wrote it. This is a 1.81 acre, and then this is 3.79. So the 3.79 is developed. So 1.81 acres is larger than 1 single lot, so you could get 2 uses on there. But it was called an out parcel, and I think those were the uses. Mr. Taylor worked on that plan, so if you have questions about it, he of course is available and may have a younger brain than me. Maybe.
Ms. Green, did I hear you say correctly that it is part of the package that the gas station would have limited hours, 6 a to 11 p?
Yes, ma'am. I think, like you, expressed some concerns with the uses, and they took out a lot of the uses that I actually shared with them, and in addition have limited the hours of the gas station to, I wrote it on here. Yep, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. And they identified the space for the liquor store and put a maximum size as well, just because, I mean, it was pretty clear to us that there's concern with that proposed use. And so rather than leaving it open as a permitted use as many times in the development, they restricted the area and the use to just this one. So on this plan, the liquor store is here. Before, it was just listed as a permitted use, so it could be in several of these buildings, but they're limiting it to just that rectangle.
So I'm speak up, just kind of give you guys some thoughts on this. I'm mainly because I made a comment at our workshop meeting when this was brought up, and I do appreciate a couple things that have happened since then. You know, dropping off that 4th building, I think, was a very good idea. You know, I talked with Mr. Taylor and Mr. Patel about the idea of kind of what that gas station might look like, and just sort of if there was going to be one, it, you know, it would be more neighborhoody. But I'll tell you guys a couple things, just where I'm at on this. That's a good word. I heard it. Yeah, neighborhood.
Twice tonight.
I probably made it up. You know, here's my thoughts on this. First of all, and staff, just close your ears when I say this. I don't need Oak Haven going through. I mean, it's not like they need ingress and egress out of their neighborhood. They've got multiple ways in and out. That just doesn't need to be one for me. So that can scratch, which I think actually helps the developer. I don't think they want to spend the money to build it, frankly. But you know, I'd have to take some real serious coercion for that. You know, even with that gone, if we could just wave a magic wand and say that's not going to cut through, I told the developer that, you know, that I could probably get moving along with either a gas station or a liquor store, but not both, and certainly not at those hours. You know, I'm the first gentleman who came up and spoke. I mean, I really just can't imagine going through here. One of the main differences, I did go around and look at some of the other developments that this developer has, the properties that I think would be fairly close to this. One of my main concerns is the walking traffic, just to be honest with you. You know, I think there will be some car traffic through here, but, you know, it worries me a little bit from the number of people who are gonna be walking from across Sulphur Springs, across Northfield, in the multifamilies there. You know, to get across there is not really a very good way to do that, and to, you know, it just seems like we've just gotten the pantry over there down the road has just finally gotten kind of redone and looking good again, and I just hate to plug something else in here that I think will turn into what the pantry turned into and the laundromat, and then, you know, what is just getting renovated all down that road. So anyway, I could get along with some of this stuff. I'm definitely better now than I was then, because, you know, the whole purpose, and I had recalled it right, which, by the way, I don't know that y'all caught what Ms. Green said, but we did not approve this in 2019. The 1.0 version, it did not get approved, and then they never came back. It got deferred, and they never came back. And, you know, part of what I mentioned the other day was, you know, one of the concerns we had with this at the council level was you're just putting commercial right in on top of residential. They bought this second piece of property and then crammed 2 more buildings in there. It looked to me like they were closer to residential with commercial than they were to start with. So moving that 4th building is definitely helpful to me, but I just don't think I can go along with all of the high impact use that's gonna be there: restaurant, liquor store, gas station with a bunch of gas pumps. And I just don't, I mean, it is not what the plan calls for, and I think this is clearly one of those things where we started it across the street, and now they're saying, well, look what's across the street. We ought to be able to do commercial too, and they're asking for more than what we allowed across the street. It just doesn't seem right on a whole bunch of levels.
All right. I agree with Mr. LaLance and disagree with him also. I think I've talked to almost every resident in that neighborhood in the past couple weeks, and 57 years this road's been on the recorded plat, and I'm kind of like Mr. LaLance. I don't really see a necessity for this road, and I think almost everybody I talked to wasn't necessarily against the development when I talked to them on the phone or at my office, but every single one of them were against that road. I live in a neighborhood that I have almost every one of those uses, including a liquor store and a gas station, within walking distance of my house. I have a connector road like that taking me past that gas station to get into my neighborhood, and I don't really think it adds on to the traffic per se, but they've been 57 years and not had the road. My neighborhood's had that road the entire time. So I'm not against the project. Like I said, I've got all these uses within walking distance of my neighborhood, but I am against the road. And from what I heard from almost every single person I talked to, the project's good if we axe the road. So my idea is right here in that phase 1 where that road is, where there's a right in, right out, or a right out of it, and I guess left in, just leave the road stubbed right there and leave it stubbed where it is stubbed right now, and don't connect the two. But that's where I'm at.
And I would just, on that, you know, just for discussion, and I guess from, you know, all these years of planning staff drilling in our head about connectivity and 911 access, and how do you get to those properties in the back when, you know, there's a disaster, and, you know, when you have the opportunity, as it has always been presented to us before, to connect, then you should take advantage of those opportunities. So I would just say that's, you know, if we had someone from 911 here, or if we had just had a, you know, tornado or any other, you know, national, you know, any type of natural disaster that had caused, you know, these people to be trapped at the end of those streets and not able to get out, or fire trucks and ambulances not able to get in to help them, then we would be wondering, why did we not ever connect that? You know, we had the opportunity to connect that once, and we never did it. We in fact said we weren't going to do it and left them with no way for 911 services to get to them. So on the connectivity, you know, I will struggle if we sit here and say, you know, we're not, you know, we don't like the connectivity. That's, again, just kind of against what I'm used to doing from a planning side. I do appreciate being able to see the uses that we allowed in the development across the street. I will, as I reminded somebody that I spoke with during these last couple of weeks, this plan across the street is not one that I voted for when it came through. I voted against this. I did not like the 3 stories or 2 stories or however tall the storage building was, and I didn't think that was the appropriate use next to these residential homes. So I was not in favor of that. I do like all the uses that have been allowed on this. That went through. It's a beautiful project. It's a beautiful storage unit. Looks great. You know, the neighbors have lived through that. I would kind of like to see maybe these uses that we approved on this project across the street might be the type of uses we would want to see approved on this if this project were to go through. So just a few of my thoughts. I'm sure I'll have more before it's over, but who else has some comments?
I'll just speak from my standpoint. I know I would agree with Rick and the guys on taking the building out. I do think that is a very good thing compared to what we saw the last time, because it did seem congested. The road, I mean, from a planning standpoint, I am a proponent of connectivity, so I do think the road should go through. I understand the neighbors and why they don't want it, but I also look at from a good planning standpoint, it is probably a good thing for the road to go through. I'm also a proponent of live, work, play. So having a gas station and having other uses that are close to what you would want, I would be definitely a proponent of it. So from my standpoint, the project is a good project.
I'd like to echo your comments there, and I would disagree with Mr. Lance that I believe this will create a lot of positive walkability in that neighborhood with the redoing of the streets and whatnot. I believe that'll help out with a lot of walkability around the neighbors that are in that area. I think the project is something that is needed in that area as well. So I'd like to see it move forward. I do think the removal of that 4th building was imperative to see it move forward. And I also like the idea of the connectivity to Trinity and Oak Haven, just from a planning perspective and emergency services perspective.
So I'll comment. You know, I've been on the Planning Commission for a long time, and I'll have to agree with Kathy's comments with respects to when we look at these projects, we want the connectivity or at least have multiple points of access for a particular project. So without Oak Haven, I'm okay with the number of ingresses and egresses with respects to this project. I don't know that this project has to have Oak Haven as an egress or ingress as part of the project. The connectivity would be, though, if we ever saw, I know there was a comment from a particular individual that somebody was just going to build one house on this particular property that had 10 lots, you know, just at the point that if those RS10 lots were ever developed, Oak Haven's going to have to be developed at that point in time, because if I'm not mistaken, they're not going to have access to any road if they're not. So that would only make sense at that point. But I don't, I'm in agreement with Rick with respects to, I'm not positive that we got to have this Oak Haven piece as part of the project.
I guess I'll go last, now that it's done, but I would like to hear from staff, some comments about not connecting Oak Haven. I am a fan of connectivity as well, but it's not been there. Again, would really like to hear staff's comments on that. I think the design of the gas station is well done and really contributes to the character of the smaller scale. You know, one-story buildings is helpful. The definitive location of the liquor store, also keeping it within the interior of the development, provides that buffer with the other buildings. And I think the restricted hours is also a positive move as far as keeping the traffic and noise down at late at night. So I also support the overall concept of this development.
And I would add in regards to the Oak Haven, I do still think what I believe this plan is talking about is the Oak Haven piece would mainly initially just be the little stub to get to the back side and allow that rear access out, and it would not extend on until such time that last lot, maybe is that lot 3, is that correct, Mr. Taylor?
Yes, ma'am. What we have proposed is for that connection not to occur until that building is constructed. And so what we have seen, or what we've proposed, is these two buildings will be the first 2 phases. They may happen simultaneous. The back building would be delayed until we find a definitive tenant.
And so would, from Sulphur Springs Road to that little behind, what is that building?
3.
What was that, building 3?
Yes, ma'am.
So would you even extend that at all initially, or just even when that building 3 was done?
So we would have all of that right there would be part of our phase 1.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. That, we're very much in favor of that connection. We like the full access. We actually think it helps the overall flow of everything at this intersection by having what I just colored in green. The rest, we are neutral, I will say.
And that's probably what I would comment. I mean, I think the connectivity is good from a connectivity standpoint. I don't think the connectivity is going to add value to the center.
I think we would probably agree with that statement.
Right, I think the developer agrees with that. I think that's the planning side of it coming through, that possibly that connection would be a positive in the long run. So, let's see. Just look over the rest of these. That really, there was the mention Ms. Smith had, I believe, about the sidewalks. And of course, those would be extended as the road was extended, and they would just extend on the newly developed part of the road, not beyond.
Yes, ma'am. And so I looked at that, and if we build all of Oak Haven, we're about 50 feet short of the intersection. And so similar to what we did across on the south side of Northfield, I think we could easily get the sidewalk to the intersection. That would not be a problem if we're building all of Oak Haven. So that would not be a problem.
We would need to secure an easement from that property owner.
I think they could do it right away.
It could be built within right away, you believe?
Yep.
Okay.
And I will say, the property to the north, we don't have any plans for redevelopment in the future, but that property does have access to that right-of-way of Oak Haven Drive. And so the way we asked them to set up this planned development was that proposed building 3, we expect years until it's built. I mean, they may be surprised me and come back with something sooner. But we had language in the book that said if the property to the north is developed sooner, then they would be responsible for the extension, because we know that there's interest in that property to the north and that it likely will look different than it does today. So of course we are considering the current residents today and the future residents of this area. So of course they're proposing just doing a phase 1 and phase 2 of the extension, but it could be redevelopment of the parcel to the north would be looking at that street as well at that time. They do have access to it. It is recorded as public right-of-way, not a private drive. And so we were looking at an opportunity to have developers pay for something instead of taxpayers. So it's for this development and what's to the north and the existing residents. And that language is in the book. So when they build it, they'll build most of the south side of the road and then leave the north side of the road for this development to do. And so there'll be sidewalks initially on the south side, and the person to the north will do the sidewalks on that side.
Okay. What other comments or questions? No, sorry. Can't after the public hearing's closed. Sorry, Ms. Smith. I will just say, obviously, we have a lot of opinions up here. We're a diverse group, and that's what it's supposed to be. We love hearing from all of you all. That's part of what this is about. We appreciate everyone coming out and giving us all of your thoughts and opinions. There's always something we haven't thought of before and didn't think about, and it also initiates discussion for us up here. And even with everything we go through, we don't all always agree on everything. And so what we'll see some of, it looks like possibly tonight, we may not all agree on anything we may vote on tonight. I would take it most any way it probably goes, it will still go to the higher level, as we like to call it, the council. And so all we do is make a recommendation for the council, and then they get to make actual decisions up there. So, up there. Any other comments, questions regarding this actual application? And if not, then we are ready for a motion. From anyone that's willing to take a stab at it.
I'll take a stab at it. We'll see how far we get. So I'll make a motion that we approve the site plan project, but we would only, as the developer has requested, we would only ask him to do the extension for Oak Haven to Sulphur Springs out of that first, out of Lot 3. And my motion would be that we would not have connectivity to the west or going west on Oak Haven. And then, as Margaret Ann mentioned, if this north parcel is ever developed, they would be able to come into this extension and get out, but not necessarily go back towards Trinity. So that's my motion. I can tell everybody likes it.
So it's a motion basically as submitted, with the exception of it is not a full connection of Oak Haven.
That's correct. That we would not require the developer to develop the Oak Haven Drive west of this little intersection where Lot 3 hits Oak Haven.
Okay. There's our motion.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second.
So I'm gonna throw a little bit of discussion on that.
Yes, sir.
You know, the walkability actually probably gets potentially hurt by not having the connector, because the people from that neighborhood who don't want to really drive on that road would probably walk down that road to get to some of these places if they decide they want to eat at Checkers or whatever goes in there to get a burger or to, you know, get a bottle of whatever.
So we could well, I'll be quiet. I mean, he's already agreed to put the sidewalk in, so even though that may not make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll say we could still put the sidewalk in regardless of whether we're building the road or not.
Well, we certainly don't want people to be encouraged to walking through people's yards or, you know, the right-of-way, which has basically been somebody's yard for 57 years, right? I mean, I assume, do we own the right-of-way right there, right now?
The right-of-way is the city's. It was dedicated to the city. It's our possession. We, and of course, city engineer can speak to this, would not, if this road does not extend through, we would not be in favor of keeping it right-of-way, because that means that we're maintaining private drive for private development. When we maintain roads and manage roads, we like for them to be for the public good, and if it only serves this development, we wouldn't be in favor of maintaining this as public right-of-way. And then just including a sidewalk within the public right-of-way would then mean it's the city's responsibility to maintain it. So, and of course, I would need to go back and discuss it with staff, but even my initial conversations would be that we wouldn't be in favor of just running a sidewalk through public right-of-way without the proper facilities in there, because it's now our responsibility to maintain. It's not something that we can't allow private developers to maintain our right-of-way once we have possession of it.
So can I ask, if, let's just say if we approved the plan as submitted, and the phasing side of it still just has the road only with that first section that we're talking about initially.
It does.
And do they then, if they were going to then make improvements to that back section that right now is basically empty or is parking lot, do they come back at that point with the site plan and everything, and that is a point where we could decide we don't even want the rest of that road, just improve your parking lot, get all the parking you need, and abandon the right-of-way at that point?
We could certainly consider the right-of-way extension at site plan. That's definitely something that we can do at a condition of approval. I can say that it has been problems with emergency services in the past when you have a portion of public right-of-way here and the other portion here, and I'm trying to...
Battleground.
Yeah, Battleground, but there's another one. There's several, and it can cause confusion with emergency service responders, with addressing. So we would not be in favor of just a small portion of the right-of-way. I either want it probably to all be right-of-way, or none of it to be right-of-way. And since we know that there will be more than just these private owners there, we are suggesting public right-of-way.
But you want it all right-of-way, but it's not all, it doesn't all have to be developed at the same time.
No, it doesn't. It can be phased. Best case scenario is all at the same time. That is the best case scenario for our service delivery, our garbage, our solid waste, our fire department, which actually does mostly first responder calls, our police department. It's best case scenario, but if this isn't a best case scenario, you may consider alternatives.
And staff had actually asked that the road be built all as part of phase one, correct?
Yeah, our request was for this entire extension to happen during phase one. They came back and said, well, they'd rather have it at phase 3, which is far down the line. That's not our preferred option. Phase 1 is preferred. I think we were okay to settle for phase 2 since it'll come soon. Phase 3 is really kicking the can down the street quite far, in our opinion. And so we were looking for it to happen sooner.
Mr. Lillian?
Well, there's a motion, a second. I don't want to belabor it too much, but I'm trying to think that just, part of the issue for me on the road coming through there is the fact, the uses, that are being there. I mean, I think in that building too, the commercial center, it's 10,000 square feet. I mean, how many tenants is likely and something like that? That's 5 tenants or something? I mean,
So it's 3 if they have maximum restaurant, maximum liquor store.
okay.
So I would say a maximum of 5, more than, we're hoping for 2 or 3. So, and the liquor store is not a definite, it's just a use that could be allowed in there. And so we think we're opting for and hoping for restaurants more than anything there, so.
I can get okay with this with some changes. I just, with the way it is right now, we no gas station, no liquor store across the street. Now all of a sudden it's both over here and plus 3 to 5 other uses, and a speculative planned development building, which we also said we didn't like. We could potentially look at doing the drive. Somebody brought this up, and I know it's not the way the city will want to go, but, just if we're going to put the drive in there, use the speed cushions, just say that's going to be a contingency, that's a contingency of doing this deal. I mean, I'm not a big fan of doing this stuff just because of one development. I mean, if we wanted the road there, for me, I don't like when we're getting told we got to have connectivity, It's been that way for 57 years. I was born on Trinity Drive. I mean, it's not like it's
But I think
imminent. I get it,
also
given the
talk about that
opportunity. but-
development potential on the north side. That is,
That could be a compromise, is if we develop the road all the way out to the edge of the yellow, and then let the final connectivity be on the north side.
Well, then we still have the same issue with 911, having
No, I
2
agree.
separate
I
roads.
agree. I agree. That's the biggest challenge, is the connectivity.
The speed cushions on this section of Oak Haven aren't going to change anything with speeding and traffic through the neighborhood, though. That's just going to slow the
Well,
traffic down the road.
It might
Be-
get the cut-through traffic out of it, though.
Yeah, but I can speak to this from truth, because I live in Northwoods, where the lady was talking about, it definitely improves.
Yeah.
You either slow down or you rip out
Well,
the bottom end.
no, I
Throw
agree.
you out of the truck.
I agree where the speed cushions are. I'm talking about up here.
Well, I'm not so sure you wouldn't want to put them a little farther up too.
okay, so we have a motion that currently says the road will only go to the end of as it was discussed in what's Phase 1, but beside that building 3. That's our current motion and second. Am I correct?
You are correct.
And that's still where you want to be, right? That's our motion and our
Would you
second.
be willing to swap it out with the speed cushions?
Well, I think we have to hear from staff on the speed cushions. I've heard a lot of
I know. I
talk
can-
about speed cushions, yeah.
Okay, so currently, we're conducting that pilot program on Alexander, and we are hoping to send out surveys to the citizens that live there at the end of July to get their feedback and see what their final thoughts are. We have been working on the manual and working on the requirements for speed cushions, and currently, the program is that we don't have speed cushions, period, but for traffic calming methods, the Homeowners Association is responsible for 30%. So we've been asked to look at taking that out and dedicating some CIP money to the speed cushion program, or to the traffic calming program, and including speed cushions in the program. We've also talked about having developers put in speed cushions for areas that we know, based on history that we've seen, longer, straighter streets, if they have them in their development, then speed cushions might be asked for the developer to install. We haven't got that in there because we haven't decided that we were moving forward with speed cushions yet.
So are you saying we can or can't put them here?
Well, right now, we don't allow speed cushions in the city of Murfreesboro.
Okay.
It's still a pilot program.
Okay.
By August, it could be different. The pilot program runs till August, and then we're going to start working on the speed cushion, the traffic calming manual, and changing the language in it if we want to move forward.
Can I just ask for your professional opinion on this particular road? If Oak Haven were a complete road, as we're discussing it being possibly tonight, would this be an option for you for a speed cushion road?
It's one that we could definitely look at, yes.
It would be a study.
Yeah, and
I
just didn't know with the curve in there, does that already?
Well, one of the ones that we've looked at is Haynes Haven. They've put in, we've got 50 applications right now or 50 requests for speed cushions with 11 applications and 7 petitions that have been completed. So that's how many requests of different roadways that people have asked for speed cushions. So we're going through the evaluation process on those, looking at the speed, looking at the volumes and all that. So it would be one that we would have to go through the process to make sure. Now, if it's something that we ask developers to do, that's a different situation because it's not a city expense having to come out of the city CIP budget.
my gut feeling on this, and I, hopefully everybody kind of understands where I am on this, but I'm going to tell you the truth. My gut feeling on this, there is no way that that'll pass the mustard on a speed cushion
I wouldn't think so.
in what we're doing. I mean, and I know that they're probably expecting the worst as it relates to traffic, but that road right there is not going to have anything like Alexander Boulevard kind of traffic on it. That just ain't going to happen. People going from the Jarnet over to Northfield. I mean, there will be more traffic. I agree with that. I don't like it. I'm with all that, but it will never qualify. I can't imagine for what we're going to end up. We're going to have probably all 48 out of those 50 will qualify before this would, I would suspect, just because of the nature of the traffic flow. But that's why I kind of brought it up the way that I brought it up, was that it would probably need to be done on the front end.
Right, and that's
And not
something
go
that
through
we've
the-
considered is having the developers do them, and so it's not a city expense. And then that would be up to the developer, as long as the city decides that we are going to install speed cushions. Because it will be up to the city to maintain them at that point. And the speed cushions on Alexander have been down since February, so.
I'm just going to go ahead and comment. So if we go ahead to vote here in just a second, I will more than likely vote against the motion due to the fact that I do believe that the connectivity should still be left on the table to be there in the long run, however that happens to get there. So I'm not really in favor of just the little stub street in to get to the back, and that be what we decide. So that would be my comment. Otherwise, I could vote in favor. So, any other comments or questions before we take a vote on Mr. Halliburton's motion? And who was the second? Jennifer. Jennifer second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
No.
No. Any abstained? Did we have a 2? Do you know who voted how?
It sounded like 3 and 4.
No.
I was a no.
Yeah, so it's 2 and.
Should we do we could do a roll call vote.
Okay. We'll have a roll call. Gosh, I hate to throw that on you, Ms. Jaco. We've got our name plates out here.
Commissioner Garland? Aye.
Commissioner Halliburton?
Aye.
Commissioner Salas?
Nay.
Commissioner Russell?
Nay.
Commissioner Wright?
Nay.
Commissioner LaLance? Chair Jones?
No. Okay. So the motion did not pass.
All right, I'll make a motion.
Mr. LaLance?
I'll make a motion that we approve it. And that we approve it under the conditions that we back out liquor store from the uses and that we put speed cushions in at the cost of the developer on the proposed Oak Haven Drive extension.
But can we, I understand the developer would pay for it, but are we at a point that the city says you can put in speed bumps?
Well, if it gets that way, it'll get to the city council and.
Okay,
and I guess,
I'm with you.
I don't know, I'm trying to find a way.
Yeah.
I know this, the speed cushions have the gaps in there for the emergency vehicles. You know, so that gets emergency vehicles in and out of there. It probably stops a whole lot of the cut-through traffic, but still allows the connectivity. I'm just trying to get to some spot here. I mean, it's obviously something's gonna come on this corner. I don't love the combination of it, obviously, but the people have bought it and trying to do something, and I just think the impact of all that in one spot on this corner is not good enough for me. So anyway, I made my motion. I
So
don't
we have
know
a-
what a second if it's.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
All right. They love mine even less.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve it like it is with the speed cushions on Oak Haven.
Do we have a second?
So can I ask a question? Are we going with the city's idea that they have to do it all in the first phase,
No.
second phase?
The way it's presented, with phase 1 doing the stub and then finishing it out later.
By the applicants?
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Were there any other questions or discussion before we have a vote on this motion?
So I just want to understand it, and I'm not on the city council, but, so it goes to city council, the council will make the decision whether these speed bumps can be part of the development irrespective of the plan that has not been approved yet?
This is all new. We're all venturing into new waters here, man.
I won't predict what council will do. I guess council could probably require staff to go ahead and approve speed bumps. Or speed cushions. I hope that they don't do that, frankly, before the report comes in and the study gets completed. But, you know, you're free to make that recommendation to council.
Okay.
I would expect that staff would ask council to not require that at least until staff comes back and then council approves a plan that would include speed cushions. And then your recommendation, I guess council might or might not agree with. But my thoughts on this. Councilman?
So let's amend my motion a little bit. Pending the approval of the speed cushion program.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve as submitted with the addition of the speed bump, what do you call them?
Cushions.
Speed cushions pending approval of the current program.
There's a lot of opinions.
Is that basically? And Mr. Russell, you
Second.
seconded the motion. Any questions or comments before we vote? So we will go ahead and see if we can take a vote here. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
We'll take a roll call vote again, please.
Commissioner Garland,
Aye.
Commissioner Halliburton,
No.
Commissioner Salas,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Commissioner LaLance,
No.
Chair Jones.
Aye. So 5-2, that vote passes. Okay. Or at least moves on to city council at this point. Okay. Thank you all very much for coming out tonight. And we will move on to our next public hearing, which is an annexation petition and plan of services for approximately 39 acres located along Elam Road. Laurel H. Maples is the applicant. Ms. Rush, good evening.
Good evening, Commission. Thank you very much. The proposal before you is for the annexation petition and a plan of services for approximately 38 acres. It's located along Elam Road. Ms. Laurel Maples is the developer. The studying area includes 275 feet long segment of Elam Road. Let's see if I can find that. Right there. And the request has been submitted to the Rutherford County Road Board for consideration of the road segment, and that will be held tomorrow morning for consideration. The study area is located in the City of Murfreesboro urban growth boundary, and it is contiguous to the city limits to the north and to the west. The plan of services was included in your packet. There was an amended exhibit for the water lines that I had sent out to the Planning Commission earlier today, and it had depicted the wrong parcel, but all the other exhibits within the study was accurate, so just wanted to bring that to your attention as well. City services, as determined in the plan of services, can be provided to the property upon annexation and when the property would be developed in the future. There is also an associated zoning application that accompanied the annexation app, and that will be presented as the next item on your agenda. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Rush before we open this public hearing? So our first public hearing on this is for the annexation petition and plan of services on this 39 acres on Elam Road. So we'll open the public hearing and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak for or against this item. Okay. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. As for any other comments or questions or motions on this item?
I'll make a motion that we approve, subject to all staff comments.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Next, we have the zoning application for the 39 acres located along Elam Road to be zoned GI simultaneous with annexation. Laurel Maples, applicant. Ms. Rush.
Thank you. The subject property is a 38.8 acre portion of a much larger parcel that's 185.5 acres. It's located along the east side of Elam Road and south of Joe B. Jackson. The request is to zone the property following annexation to general industrial. The GI zoning district is one of the city's newer zoning districts, so I have included our Table 1, which lists all the typical uses that are allowed in the GI zoning district for reference for the Planning Commission. The property is currently in the unincorporated portion of the county, and it is zoned RM, which is a residential zoning district for the county. Adjacent zoning to the north, as indicated on the map, does indicate general industrial as well. We have looked and confirmed with the future land use map, and the future land use map, which was developed, 5 years ago, did identify this particular area as business park, so it was studied and looked at as a potential business park type of area. The general industrial zone does allow business park, but as well as industrial uses, including institutional uses. So staff feels that the zoning district occurred after the development of the 2035 comp plan, but it would in fact be consistent and compatible with that land use designation. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission make a recommendation to the City Council, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Rush before we open this public hearing? Okay. Seeing none, then we will open the public hearing on the zoning application and ask anyone to come forward that would like to speak either for or against this application. And seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. Any comments, questions, and/or a motion on this, please?
Move for approval, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? I think that was everyone. Vote passes. Our next item is a zoning application for approximately 0.33 acres located along Leaf Avenue to be rezoned from RS10 to PRD. It's the Leaf Avenue PRD, and B&A Homes LLC is the applicant. Ms. Smith.
I believe we skipped an item, Madam Chair. I
Did
think we're on 5D.
Oh, look at me trying to get on over to the back of the page first.
We're just trying to move the meeting along.
Yes, we have something that I know there's a lot of people here to talk about tonight. See, I was going to skip right over that. Excuse me. We will go back to item D, which is a zoning application for approximately 17.26 acres located along North Tennessee Boulevard to be rezoned from RM16 and OG to PRD, the Point at Raiders Campus PRD. And the applicant is CREI-MTSU LLC. Ms. Smith.
Well, thank you and good evening, Commissioners. As you can see on the attached map, the project is located on North Tennessee Boulevard, just north of East Northfield Boulevard, and it is adjacent to our current airport, as well as single-family detached condominium and other PRD zoned properties. The project currently has existing apartment units of 218, predominantly with three bedroom and 4 bedroom units. And the new purchaser or applicant is looking at changing the interiors of the existing buildings without adding any new square footage. Currently, the property, as it is developed, has a RM16 zone district. That zone district allows for multifamily zoning up to 16 units to the acre. It's only actually current density is at 12.63 units to the acre. But what they are looking at doing is changing the existing student apartment units into predominantly 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, which would actually increase the number of units. Not changing the square footage, but just breaking those into smaller pieces and having their own individual living rooms and spaces, and the applicant will be going over those when they come up with their portion. But by doing that, they're also decreasing the bedroom count by about 172 bedrooms. But again, 4 bedroom and 3 bedroom units to 1, 2s, and 3s. This is part of a rebranding type project that they have done in other project areas. And they have requested sanitary sewer allocation variance that will be going forward towards the council. Surrounding uses, again, are RS-15, RS-12. The commercial fringe on their piece, they're actually wanting to zone it PRD along with their RM-12. So in looking at their project site, they're showing improvements not only to the interiors of the building, but all the deferred maintenance in and around the project site. That probably has not been changed in many, many years. Getting things operable again, as well as adding some additional amenity spaces. Also, in looking at that, this takes a good look at the existing build-out. Again, 4-bedroom units on the outside of each building, 3 bedrooms on the inside, and changing it to really a different layout on the first floor and then the second and third floors. The kinds of improvements that they are looking at will also include landscape improvements, removal of an existing trash compactor that has been a problem for the area. There was a neighborhood meeting. In that meeting, there was concern by the neighbors as well as the city of trash flying onto the airport and the surrounding uses. And then additionally, there was some issues with some of the fencing in the adjacent neighborhood as well, which they are looking at addressing those 2 issues by adding additional trash dumpster spaces throughout the units. Those will all meet the city requirements and be spread out evenly. The only addition they are looking at is really another amenity, which would accommodate about 48 carport spaces. Something that would be similar to this design. This has been updated from your last program book, but the intent is that the shingles, a composition shingle would be on it to match the existing buildings, as well as brick being added to those bases, and that those structures be basically set back so they're not visible by the public right-of-way. In looking at other parking, the existing parking on the property, the new proposed renovations would require 706 parking spaces, whereas after they add those trash enclosures, additional landscaping for those trash enclosures, they would have actually 804 spaces still remaining in their existing areas, which causes about 98 spaces over the city's minimum requirements. So our minimum requirements are 1.5 parking spaces for every 1-bedroom unit, and then 2.2 for a 2-bedroom unit, 3.3 for a 3-bedroom unit. So they get to a 98 surplus over our minimum requirements. They are asking again for the PRD zone change in order to account for and allow for a 19.98 unit per gross density versus the 16 units allowed in the current RM zoning. Under our future land use map, it actually is a multifamily residential land use character, and that particular land use allows for up to 19.93 units to the acre, so it's just a little bit over what the general plan would have. The department's actually supportive of this zoning request, even though it is slightly over the general plan allotment, because the proposed reconfiguration and renovations would allow reinvestment into an existing complex that has been in disrepair and will bring a new on-site management that we believe will help promote a creation of a safe and desirable living environment. With that, I would like to invite the applicant up to kind of describe that interior change, because it's a little hard to understand, even for staff. And after that, I would ask that we open the public hearing, which has been noticed for this evening.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out how to get back to.
Mr. Murphy, welcome. And again, I apologize for skipping over. I'm quite excited about this project, so I certainly didn't want to skip it, so but welcome.
Good evening. I'm Rick Murphy of the law firm of Murphy & Goodman. I represent the applicant, their parent company, which is Capstone. They're the current owners of the property. They purchased it recently. As Ms. Smith mentioned, we had a neighborhood meeting. We had a lot of good dialogue. They're coming in and wanting to redevelop a site that sorely needs work. That they come in and do this all over the country. They're a family-owned company, and they feel like coming in and taking these units and dividing them up will make them more marketable. While it's a technical unit increase, it's a bedroom decrease, which I think also has some benefit as well. And they feel like it'll be a lot more successful project. They're going to address the deferred maintenance. And I'm really excited that they're coming to town, and hopefully they'll do another couple projects like this because it's sorely needed. Mr. Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel is going to walk us through the project, and then the applicant is going to speak briefly on their kind of vision of the project and their success in other communities with similar strategy. And then we'll be here to answer any questions y'all may have. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Good evening, Mr. Roundtree.
Chairman Jones, Planning Commissioners, my name is Clyde Roundtree, Huddleston Steel Engineering. Thank you, Rick, for the introduction. And thanks, Holly, for your hard work in the process. This is kind of a unique project to Murfreesboro. Ever since I've heard about these guys coming into town, I've been excited because we all know that a lot of our apartment complexes are problems that we have to work through, and they've come up with a solution I think is extremely valuable to the city of Murfreesboro and potentially can help us in a lot of different ways. But I just want to address 5 issues that are going to come up. I'm going to be brief, but I just want to, these kind of came out of the neighborhood meeting and some of our observations from the engineering side. Drainage has been a concern on the property because of the disrepair of the property and the poor maintenance. A lot of the swales have silted in, a lot of the curb cuts have silted in, so there's pooling water. A lot of those kind of easy maintenance issues can be resolved, and they have every anticipation of doing that. Parking. The parking lot itself is in somewhat disrepair with patch holes and those kind of things. The dumpster, basically they have a centralized compactor, but it's centralized at the front gate. So what happens is people take their garbage towards the front gate, it falls off their car, it gets open and then starts blowing around and goes into the neighborhood. The landscaping's overgrown, a lot of dead material, and then there's security matters. Each of those things will be addressed in more detail. But those are the primary things that came about between observation and the neighborhood meeting. The neighbors were very active. I think a few of them are here to speak tonight. We encouraged them to come because this is a problem for them. And one of the problems is there's been breaches in the fences, and people are going from this property into their property in their neighborhood and just kind of meandering through the neighborhood, potentially taking things out of the neighborhood. The main gate that secures the property is inoperable, so it's basically open 24/7. As was mentioned, the overall management of the property, they've coached us on what they call the downward spiral. Once an apartment starts going down, it tends to go down quick. And we've figured out the formula for that, why that happens. I'll just brief on that because to me it's super educational. When you have a 4-bedroom apartment and it starts downward spiraling, basically it goes rent by room. And all you have to do in a rent by room situation is be a bad roommate. So all of a sudden you got 4 rooms to yourself because you got the other people say, I don't want to live with you. So then what happens is you have one room being occupied, one apartment floor being occupied by one person. So you just get a lot of disparity between the rent and the income and maintaining. So this property is what they call the classic death spiral, and we've learned a lot about that. But the neighbors' concerns was, making sure if they're going to upgrade the property, they really want to know what we're going to do because they want to have full confidence that as Capstone takes into these things into consideration, they actually get done. And just as a brief overview, as far as the drainage is concerned, I've mentioned that. We're going to go ahead and open up all the swales. We're going to go ahead and take care of all the curb cuts, make sure everything drains naturally as originally designed. All the downspouts aren't tied in, and a lot of downspouts are damaged, so all that water just goes wherever. It's not controlled. And again, the swales need to be recut and reformatted, basically, redone. Parking, obviously, is just a matter of patching and striping. And as I mentioned, overhead canopies to kind of upscale the property as well. And there is ample parking. As Holly mentioned, there's 98 spaces in addition to what is required. So we feel great about that for apartments because that's usually a big issue in this area. And as I mentioned, the parking covers will be added. The dumpster is really a key. Because it's a compactor, I don't even know if it really works. I mean, I was out there and there's a door, literally a door of a car sitting next to it. There was multiple trash cans that were outside of the compactor, which made me think that maybe it's not even really functioning. The gate's damaged, so it was hard to understand how it was actually working as far as the process. But because where it's located, it's a large apartment complex, so it's quite a distance to get to that compactor. So their strategy is to decentralize the waste management and have dumpsters around the property, obviously meeting city code as far as, you know, the dumpster enclosure. So basically just making it much more easily accessible by the majority of the occupants. And then we think that'll alleviate a lot of the trash concerns, because one bag of trash that's open can create a lot of havoc. As far as the landscaping improvements, like I mentioned, there's just a lot of old, dead, overgrown material that would be trimmed up. You know, it's blocking sight lines, it's overgrowing windows, those kind of things will be alleviated in this process. And then they'd like to enhance some areas, the office, you know, the amenity areas, actually improve those areas from a landscape standpoint. And lastly, it gets down to security matters, and we feel like there's lights that are not working, there's signage that's not, you can't read it. There's the access gates, as I mentioned, are not operable, and the security fencing, as the neighbors are primarily concerned, has been breached multiple times, and there's no on-site management. So all those will be addressed as part of their solution. And I think that we have full confidence that they have done this in the past, so we're confident they can do this again. I do feel like they're a great solution to a major problem in our town. And so with that in mind, I'd like to introduce the Capstone fellows. Christopher Morin's going to be coming up and talking about the actual strategy they have. They'll have to educate you on this. It's a little bit of a, as Holly mentioned, she walked through it, but it takes a little bit of understanding, and they're experts at explaining it. So with that in mind, Christopher, if you come on up, and we're available for any questions at the public hearing, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Roundtree.
Thank you, Clyde. Good evening. My name is Christopher Moran. I'm the principal of Capstone Real Estate Investments. We have, again, recently purchased Point at Raiders campus. So this particular property was purpose-built as student housing in 2005. And when I reference purpose-built, that means a predominance of 4-bedroom units. So purpose-built specifically for students, and given the proximity to campus and other kind of market factors, this property has floundered for years. The previous owner has attempted to combat this by different measures, changing management companies and predominantly reducing rental rates. And so after years of rate reduction, the property has began to attract some non-student elements, which is now really the majority of the current resident makeup. And so, as with most things, things that are not being used for which they are built, it creates problems. And so that's exactly where this property is and frankly has been for quite some time. So that's the problem, and the question becomes, you know, how do we address it? How do we fix the problem? And this is one that we've come across many times before, and we can address it by a total redesign, basically eliminating that purpose-built element, that 4-bedroom component that again attracts only students. So once finished, this property will mirror, you know, a more conventional property profile as far as unit types go. Again, as explained, it will actually increase the number of units while decreasing the number of potential residents to the tune of 172 fewer residents. So, you know, 172 fewer people coming and going, fewer people creating noise, fewer people generating the trash, fewer people in general. So along with the unit reconfiguration will be adding and upgrading many other amenities that have been mentioned, landscape, increased campus or site-wide security system, adding dog parks, covered parking, and other amenities. So the conversion will totally change who is interested in this property. And so that will likely entail fewer students just by nature of the product and how the property will be operated. So fewer students likely translates into an older and often more responsible tenant profile, and that's certainly what we're out after. So the ultimate goal is to replicate the same success that we've had in several other markets, in several other student markets, and that is to convert a property that has clearly failed as a student property, renovate it entirely, reposition it both physically and operationally, and convert it into a property that I think everybody can be proud of. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions?
This is a curiosity question having nothing to do with planning, but what happens to the existing tenants if this is a full renovation? Is everybody out, or not that that has anything to do with what I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. So in student housing, we refer to it as being pre-leased. And so when we acquired the property, we inherited, so to speak, a lot of the residents that had leased for the upcoming school year, meaning the 21-22 academic term. And so we're going to uphold the lease that we inherited, and will fulfill that obligation. We're not intending to lease this property fully because again we would like, with approval of course, to move forward as quickly as possible. So the intent is to utilize the vacancy that we're effectively going to create to become kind of the phase one of our process, and then roll through that process as vacancy is created.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we open the public hearing?
How long do you think the process will take before you're fully?
So our estimate, again, based on approval, is to begin at the beginning of next year, the calendar year, and likely it will take about 14, 16 months in order to because again, we're having to work around a lot of the residents that we've inherited, so it's not like a blank slate, so to speak, and so that creates a lot more coordination and time.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we will open the public hearing and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak for or against this item.
My name is Elizabeth Abernathy. I live at 1140 East Northfield Boulevard, which is in Forest Oaks. And I live in the back right-hand corner, kind of backing up to the woods by the airport. And I'm 2 units away from the point. Generally, the residents at the point have not been good neighbors. They trespass on our property. They throw garbage bags across the fence onto our property. There's a lot of parking lot noise. There's been at least one case of residents engaging in lewd behavior that's clearly visible to Forest Oaks residents. I am a retired MTSU accounting professor, And in my opinion, the behavior of the residents at the point has been definitely below the norm of the MTSU students I've taught. So it's not your normal student apartment, in my opinion. I welcome this proposed change. It can't happen fast enough because I really hope it will improve the quality of our neighbors, and I urge you to approve it.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
I'm Joanna Medlin, 1130 East Northfield Boulevard, Forest Oaks 2, condominiums. I'm currently the president of the board. It's a breath of fresh air when we went to the meeting, the first one with them, of what could happen there, and we hope it does. We have lived through a disaster, and we've had stuff happen, and on my row especially, we've got 90, almost 100-year-old residents that live there, and they should have never had to endure. We've had a dead body in the woods. We have had shootings. It's been unbelievable what we've put up with. So we're going to depend on you to do the right thing, and we welcome them, and we want to be good neighbors. So thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. Who's next? We always welcome positive comments. Because we rarely.
A breath of fresh air.
Hallelujah. So if there are no others, we close the public hearing.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Did anybody have any questions or any discussion before?
I'll vote yes.
I would just like to applaud the applicant for bringing this. It's an excellent improvement to our city. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. As you can tell, we're all very happy to have you here. Thanks a lot. And now I can flip over to the back page where we have item E, a zoning application for approximately 0.33 acres located along Leaf Avenue to be rezoned from RS10 to PRD. It's the Leaf Avenue PRD, and B&A Homes LLC is the applicant. Ms. Smith.
Well, it was a breath of fresh air to hear some positive comments from the public. So this particular application is located on Leaf Avenue. Make sure we're on the right one. Yes, we're on Leaf Avenue. Make sure I have them in the right order as well. As you can see on the attached map, just south of East Clark Boulevard, as well as south of Palmer Drive. The property abuts a existing cemetery to the west, a dental office to the north, church closer to the side, as well as apartments and single-family detached to the south. This particular property is on 0.33 acres of land, which currently meets the RS10 single-family standards, and the surrounding uses. The existing zone district allows for only one single-family detached home on a 10,000 square foot lot, but the applicant is requesting that the PRD subdivided into two lots, where one lot would be 7,395 square feet and the second would be 6,816 square feet, which is very similar to an RS6 zone district. The proposal has two modern single-family detached units for its proposal. That are laid out side by side. You can see one lot being 51 feet wide, one being 47 feet wide. In a comparative zone district of the RS6, that would require a 50-foot wide lot And believe it or not, the only exception or the reason for applying for the PRD is that they're 3 feet short of that width. And actually, if you did a 50-foot lot and a 48-foot, they would be 2 feet short. But in looking at our future land use for this area, it does show it as suburban residential land use, which allows for or works with RS-15, RS-12, RS-10, and has only about a 3.54 dwelling units to the acre. This particular proposal, because of the size of the lot, would equate to about 6.6 dwelling units to the acre. So staff is supportive of this zoning request, including the deviation from the future land use map, for 2 reasons. One, it supports infill of a vacant lot. So currently this lot has nothing on it, so there's nothing to demolish in place, and it's with a single family detached. And then secondly, the proposed use provides for a transition from a lower density residential area to the adjacent business that is closer to Clark. So if you look at it, why hasn't it developed over time? Probably most people don't want to be next to a dental office. But this gives the opportunity to, one, have single-family detached structures and provide a smoother transition from that RS-10 district to something that is really closer looking to an RS-6 through the PRD being requested this evening. So with that, the applicant is here to go over the project, and this is a scheduled public hearing.
Thank you, Holly. Clyde Roundtree, Ellison Steel Engineering, representing Brian Burns and one of his many companies. Is this under Blue Sky? I asked Brian before the meeting, because I should have asked this question earlier, but I asked him why only 2. Because there are certain situations where we've tried to do more density than this with townhomes. And to Brian's credit, he's sensitive to different environmental conditions in different locations. And with this application, we feel like this is an appropriate request in terms of the amount of density we're asking for on this particular lot. And the fact that he has a good eye for these kind of pieces of property, and we already know the quality of his construction is going to be, above average, if not superior to a lot of things around. So we're grateful for the opportunity to work with Brian on these kind of projects. But I also, as one of the planners who helps him, I'm glad that he has sensitivity to the different environments he's working within. So with that in mind, I'm open for any questions you may have regarding this. Brian is definitely erring towards more of a contemporary style architecture. Just kind of likes that look. So we're trying to be respectful of the adjacent property, but at the same time, he wants to make sure it has a little bit of a contemporary edge. So with that in mind, I'm available for any questions you may have. Brian's available, but again, I think Brian's trying to be sensitive to the adjacent neighbors in this situation, and I appreciate that.
Any questions before we open the public hearing?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Roundtree. So we will open the public hearing and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak either for or against this application.
My name is Ben Jamison. I'm the owner of the dental office right next to this property. The lot is very narrow, and I would like to see some pictures of what you're proposing to put there.
Thank you, Dr. Jamison. Anybody else that would like to come forward and speak?
So I've got one of the architectural designs up on the screen, if we can have it on the main monitors. There we are. So we have 2 different floor plans.
Can I just ask first, Ms. Smith, is there anybody else here that wanted to speak tonight? I can't see quite over there. Is anybody else left over there? And if not, I'm just going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Okay.
Sorry about that, Madam Chair. So both of the house elevations are including cementous material throughout the front sides of the buildings. Both of them have a 2-car garage with a 2-car, 2 cars in the front or 4 cars in front of the garage. 4 cars. This is not in the CCO. So it has the regular 4-car parking standard is required. And then here's the left side of that first elevation, the right side, and the rear. And this particular one I want to say this is Lot 1A. Is that the one closest to the dental office? Okay, furthest away. So 1B, 2, is this one, would be the one that's directly next to the dental office. That has, again, cementous siding, brick materials, and a wood-looking material. And then the rear elevation and side elevations around the building, and both of them have a brick water table that would be included on those particular drawings as well. And this is the right elevation, so the one that would be facing the adjacent neighbor would be this one.
Could I ask one more question, please?
No, I'm sorry. Public hearing's closed.
And generally, single-family residential, if it was just created on a single lot, we would not have any weigh-in on any of the architecture. It's only because it is a PRD that we do have the ability to weigh in on single-family design.
Madam Chair, I have a question for the either the developer or Clyde. On page 7, it says one of these is a one-car garage. On page 14 of your book, it says they're both two-car garages. But the one appears to be at least a couple foot narrower.
There's one has a one-car garage, one has a two-car garage, but both have two-car, four-car capability outside.
14 says two-car garage. So I
Okay, okay, I'm sorry, David. Brian said I'm getting mixed up with the Nook, which is the next presentation. They both are two-car garages.
both will be two-car garages.
With four-car capabilities outside the building and parking lot.
I just happened to know, I was flipping through and just noticed that.
Sure.
I wonder which one it was, so thank you.
Okay, so you were saying they are both two-car garages with four-car parking?
Correct.
Looks narrow. Okay. And just kind of looking at the, the picture looking of the building, not the just drawings. It almost looks like a flat roof, but is it more like what we're seeing in the sketches, that there is actually a pitch in this roof? It's not a flat roof, is that?
The contemporary roof typically, Chairman Jones, has a little bit of a slighter pitch to it, so it definitely has a pitch. It's not a flat roof scenario. The side elevations probably represent that better.
And I'm struggling a little with the contemporary and trying to fit into the neighborhood. I understand you like the contemporary design, but does it fit into this neighborhood? So I'm not sure how y'all want to.
It's sort of a hodgepodge of a neighborhood. It's got a lot of the older cottage houses down towards the Greenland side, but we've got a church in front of us, an apartment complex, and then we got a dental office beside us. So we thought it would be a good look to go more modern there. I feel that's the structures that's coming in the future, and it seemed like a good spot to put it in. Whereas our Vine Street project, which comes up next, it was kind of hinted to us to stay more cottage over there because it's more in downtown area. Part of the deal with the modern structures is the roof pitches aren't, they call them modern prairie homes. The roof pitches are more 4 and 5 12 pitch roofs. And then you put the big windows and stuff with it. It gives it a really nice look, in my opinion. They're not cheap to build. They're more expensive to build usually.
And I just, in general, love contemporary design, but I'm not sure I love it right here. Just, I don't know, but I'll take any other, other comments from the Planning Commission? Comments, questions?
So on page 6, what is item D? Or what type of establishment is that?
Empty. It used to be a physician's office, and then it was, not sure what it is now.
Yeah, it looks like on page 6, item D, that's the corner of the church property.
Okay.
So
So you're talking about this one right here. So as you're looking at D, it's coming through here through kind of the front end of the parking lot and hitting this portion of the church property.
Okay, I understand.
And then here's the dental use that's directly next door. And then this is the one directly to the south. B. So this one's not B?
There's a house between that we're doing right there.
Okay, so this one you're saying is down here, one more unit. So it's not 1203, but it's 1129. So this is then 2 properties south of the existing one. And then here's another shot of the church. And then this one in the bottom is the existing lot that's vacant.
I think it's a great looking project. I think it's surrounded by a lot of different architecture and situations, and I think it's a benefit to the area personally. If there's no other comments, I move to approve subject to all staff comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next, we have a zoning application for approximately 0.15 acres located along East Vine Street to be rezoned from RS8 and CCO to PRD. This is the Nook on Vine PRD, and CCO, the City Core Overlay. B&A Homes LLC is the applicant. Ms. Smith.
Well, good evening again for our third PRD of the evening. This particular one is actually within our CCO zone district, so the zoning rules are a bit different in this particular area. But the project location, as we can see on the map, is currently known as 820 East Vine, and it's located on the south side of the street, directly across from a RS8 zone district, a PRD on the corner, RS8 surrounding the site, and then a RS15 apartment complex just slightly over from the property. This particular one is on 0.15 acres, and it currently contains one single-family dwelling, which is zoned RS8. Currently, the applicant would like to go ahead and apply for the PRD, as the current zoning district would not allow for the splitting of the lot. So what they would want to do is take that 6,700 square foot lot, and subdivide it into 2 lots, one being 3,400 square feet and the other being 3,300 square feet, and construct 2 single-family dwellings within that existing neighborhood. Most of the neighborhood was more traditional in architecture, so staff did ask for a more traditional architectural look. When you're looking at the site data for the unit, this is really most similar to a RSA1 zone district. And when you compare it to that particular zone district, the one exception would be the floor area ratio that's allowed in that zone district is normally 0.3 maximum floor area ratio. Their proposal would actually be at 0.55 and 0.57 floor area ratio for lots 1 and 2. As you can see in the example, they are proposing to have 5-foot side yard setbacks and to have a minimum 20 rear yard setback and a 20-foot front yard setback. In looking at the general plan designation for this area, it calls out a suburban residential land use character, which is generally an RS15, RS12, RS10 zone districts, with about 3.54 dwelling units to the acre. This particular proposal is at 13.5 dwelling units per acre. Staff, however, is supportive of this rezoning request, including the deviation from the future land map for the following reasons. First and foremost, which was added to the written text, but I mentioned it during our last meeting, was that the redevelopment of this subject property is appropriate in this instance, as it's located in the area of the CCO where existing land use patterns are inconsistent or unestablished. So you saw in that first map, there's apartments, there's smaller lots directly across the street, there's a little bit of a hodgepodge, but at least the architecture seems to be consistent, but not the lot sizes. And then secondly, it meets the CCO purpose, which is promoting reinvestment into downtown Murfreesboro and the surrounding neighborhoods, which will contribute to the vitality and quality of life of the downtown, continuing that positive trend towards reinvestment in the area. And third, that compact, dense development is desirable in and around downtown, which promotes walkability. This evening, the applicant is here to go over aspects of their project, and then we would also ask that you open and conduct a public hearing. And I forgot to say, go to the next slide.
Those are great.
There's the slide of what it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Chairman Jones, Commissioners, my name is Clyde Roundtree, Host of Steel Engineering. This is called the Nook on Vine. That's another project by Mr. Burns, another info project. This one is taking advantage of some of the opportunities that the CCO creates as far as density. And so with that in mind, I just want to introduce the project a little bit because I think it came up in the last presentation as far as architectural character. As was mentioned by Holly, this is a one-car garage on the left side, and then on the right side, it's a two-car garage. CCO requires two parking spaces per unit, so we're exceeding parking requirements, but the parking will have 2 spaces out front. So even on the one-car garage, there'll be a capability for the 2 cars outside of the garage as well. I do think I want to talk about architecture. This shows the flexibility of Mr. Burns in terms of, like he said, this is much more the craftsman character, so we feel like it is fitting with the adjacent neighborhood. I know with staff, front entry garages are not as optimum as we'd like, but these narrower lots are going to kind of require that. But with that in mind, Mr. Burns is committed to more of a craftsman style door on the garage, something that, in architectural character-wise, looks really good, and making sure that the nose of the garage doesn't stick out, which is typically what you find is a real concern in front entry garages. So these have the character of the building that we're proposing on both this unit and the next. I'll show both elevations because I think it matters. Have that real craftsman character. The one thing the staff has asked us to do, and Mr. Burns is more than willing, is to create some sort of a foundation alternative material. So it's not, some sort of lap siding going all the way down. Go ahead and break up that material, which is consistent with what we're seeing with GDO. It'd be more of your defined base that's coming across most architecture now, coming through the city. And again, we're always making sure, in the old days, builders, they weren't concerned about the side of the houses, but we're being more and more concerned to making sure there's some sort of articulation on the side of the house. In this case, windows, foundation, and even the fact that you see the broken up facade from the side with the porches and the varied roof line adds a lot of architectural interest. So with that in mind, I'm here to answer your questions you may have. I'm excited that we're working in the CCO and that it seems like it's doing what it was designed to do to encourage revitalization downtown. Mr. Burns is more than committed to that, but again, I'm impressed that he's willing to diversify his product to match the expectations of the neighborhood. Even though it's a larger building than the adjacent homes, as Brian mentioned, this is probably what's coming, for the adjacent properties in the future. We found that even the people who have committed to the older properties and restored those, they're excited about new development because it's raising their property values. So I believe the engine that CCO is creating is working well, and Mr. Burns is doing well to take advantage of that. So thanks for the opportunity to present the Nook on Vine. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them to the best of my ability.
Any questions for Mr. Roundtree before we open public hearing? Okay, thank you very much. We will open the public hearing and ask anybody that would like to speak on this item, please step forward to the podium. And I don't see anybody else left here tonight. So we will close the public hearing. Ask for any other comments or questions regarding this item.
There are none. I'll make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
I'll second.
We have a motion and multiple seconds. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you all very much. Next, we have staff reports and other business.
I have nothing.
Really? Ah, okay. Seeing none, then we stand adjourned.